Good afternoon. Welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator of Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I would also appreciate it for those of you that do enjoy our weekly calls, find them informative, to go ahead and subscribe and share it with other like-minded individuals. Today is June 14th. A lot is going on, and so we want to go ahead and get right into the call. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other pre-valued currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. Of course, the most important bit of information for all of us, particularly those of us that have been involved in this for quite some time, is the window for the potential reinstitution of the dinar. And in my opinion, this is something that could literally happen at any time, and we'll get into the details in just a moment. I wanted to make one other point, and it's this. We have been absolutely inundated with calls, texts, emails, from prospective clients and existing clients, and we're doing the best we can to keep up with it. But if you're an individual that have not heard back from us thus far this week, you will hear from us. We will be on the phone nonstop after this call, Thursday and Friday as well. So we will catch up with you. We understand we're at a potentially pivotal point and time is of the essence. And so we will do our best to get back to everyone. With regard to today's calls, and I'm going to move quickly again for the same reason. The phone's blowing up, and we really want to get back to individuals. So I'm going to the best of my ability, try to bottom line information. So for those of you that have been kind enough to listen regularly, you'll pick up that I'm moving rather quickly through this, and it's because, frankly, time is of the essence. I'm going to discuss three issues briefly today. One is Iraq's budget. Two, the CBI operations, recent CBI operations. And three, the transition to a private sector economy. So let's go ahead and start first with the budget. As those of you that follow this know, on Sunday, June 11th, Iraq did pass their tripartite budget. Unlike all previous budgets, it's a 3-year budget. It's got a lot of moving parts, and we'll get into that. The budget's been sent to Prime Minister Soudani and President of the Republic, Rashid, as well for approval. Embedded in this budget are mechanisms to accommodate the 3-year time frame. Budget allows for the adjustments based on changes in revenue, adjustments based on change in expenditures, and adjustments based on change in exchange rates. With a 1-year budget, that's not quite as necessary. And, of course, in the past, the argument always was, well, if they don't change the rate before the budget, we're locked in for a year. Not necessarily. They could make adjustments, but there would have been very time-consuming mathematical adjustments to be made. In my opinion, all those adjustments for potential changes in the exchange rate have already been calculated because they know they're going to need to change the exchange rate. Why do we know they need to change the exchange rate? Because based on the line item vetoes in the budget, it's impossible for them to do the things that they want to do at the program rate. Now, we know that they de-dollarized in country, meaning that the citizens operate with the dinar. But we also know that the government has perhaps the largest reserve USD currency they've ever had in history. But that's not nearly enough to run the government on a 3-year basis. So obviously the only solution would be the establishment of a new currency, an adjustment in the exchange rate. The HCL, of course, is a very important law, and all of the relevant parties in Baghdad and Kurdistan are in agreement on the HCL, so that's not an impediment at all. Another very good thing about the budget, although this is a side note, is, in my opinion, this finally and irrevocably puts an end to the Iranian interference. And Maliki and some of the other pro-Iranian officials that are represented in the minority in the coalition framework have basically been defanged. So I don't think they have any chance of stopping what's happening in Iraq, and that's a long time coming, and that's good news. So we have the passage of the budget and agreement from all of the relevant parties. Certainly Soudani and Rashid are anxious to proceed because they were involved in a lot of the things necessary for the passage of the budget. So giving the budget to them for approval, in my opinion, is purely perfunctory and has nothing to do with the final entry into the Gazette. Now let's talk a little bit about the CBI operations. Well, we know that they just recently adjusted the IQD rate. They went from 1320 to 1300. That's a minor change, but again, it's moving in the right direction. Now, there's some people that feel that we're just going to wake up one day and the dinar is going to be at north of $3. That could happen. In my view, I don't think that will happen. I think it's going to be incremental, but I think it's going to move fairly quickly. Now that the budget's passed, they want to, finish what they've started. Of course, the CBI has established the electronic platform for point-of-sale system, which is very important. They now have established international links with their banking system. They've created the citizen accounts, which actually that was created a couple of months ago, to accomplish basically two things. First, to facilitate the payments to the citizens pursuant to the HCL revenues. And second, it allows the citizens to deposit their 3-0 provisional currency in order to have it exchanged for the new national currency. So, again, everything is moving in the right direction. The CBI also announced that in the very near future there will be the inclusion of the new category small notes in the ATMs. There is a high-level meeting scheduled between the Iraqi Trade Bank and J.P. Morgan and the CBI and J.P. Morgan. So the largest bank in the United States is now in negotiations with the Iraqi banking system and the CBI. This makes absolutely no sense unless the Iraqi dinar is coming out of a program rate. The CBI has also reinstituted the Unified Treasury Account, which is a tool that is necessary in order to unify and manage cash flows, particularly since their budget, again, is a 3-year budget. Lastly, Iraq, along with a great many nations, have been making a lot of purchases of gold recently. Now, this could be for a number of reasons. One, global inflation. This is a hedge against global inflation. Two, they want to make sure that their currency is going to be Basel IV compliant. What is Basel? Basel was a process. It's a 5-tiered process, 1 through 5. We're actually in Basel IV. What this is the transition from fiat-based currency to commodity-backed currencies. So this is very, very important. It also means that countries that do hold the dinar or any currency that is Basel IV compliant technically have a gold derivative in their portfolio because, once again, the currency is backed by a commodity. In the case of Iraq, it's not just gold. I'll get into that in a little while, but it's commodity-backed. It doesn't have to be just gold. And Basel IV is basically defined as the ability of a given nation to bring their natural resources, to glean their natural resources and then bring it to market within 5 years. So Iraq is really, really ahead of the grid on that score. And the last area, of course, is the transition to a private economy. Now, I've discussed this in the past and I've gone into detail about it. But Iraq, in my opinion, might be, per square mile, the richest country in the world. And this transition means they're finally going to be able, on a global scale, to take advantage of the riches in the areas of agriculture, industry, international trade, and even tourism. We have to remember that the Iraqi history is very rich, very long, goes all the way back to Hammurabi, who established basically the first really modern form of government with their own civil and criminal code, the old Sumerians. And so even tourism is something that, once Iraq is stable, is going to be a moneymaker for them. And, of course, they're very important geopolitically, and I'll get into that as well. Also, the passage of a 3-year budget is going to allow for the funding for massive construction and reconstruction of Iraq. We know that Prime Minister Soudani was in Cairo, Egypt, discussing trade arrangements. We also know that the President of the Republic, Rashid, was in Rome and Italy, again, talking about international trade. So they're really moving forward in all of these areas. So let me talk a little bit about Iraq, their Basel IV compliance, the fact that, in my opinion, they might be the richest country in the world per square mile. So let's talk a little bit about this. Iraq has the largest known oil reserves in the Middle East. In addition, Iraq has what's referred to as the sweetest crude, meaning that their oil has the lowest sulfur content. That's very important, because once you have extracted the petroleum, it has to be refined. But petroleum with the lowest sulfur reserves, such as Iraq's, means it can be refined very, very quickly at a much less of a cost. And we have to remember that only about 1/3 of refined petroleum is used in a combustion engine. Fully 2/3 of it is used for the production of glass, plastics, textiles, pharmaceuticals, electronics, and nanotechnologies. As a matter of fact, no computer, no smartphone can exist without the fossil fuel. So this makes Iraq, in and of itself, an extremely wealthy country. But despite the fact that Iraq's crude has the lowest sulfur content, Iraq also has the largest known sulfur reserves. Why is that important? Because sulfur is necessary and indispensable in the production of sulfuric acid, which is necessary for literally hundreds of industrial applications. So Iraq has it coming and going with regard to sulfur. Then, of course, we have the Tigris-Euphrates River Delta. Over thousands of years, there have been deposits of precious and industrial metals. The earth is also extremely fertile for agricultural purposes. And because it's a delta, because it's low, because it's flat, it's also very easily mined. Then there's the geopolitical issue. Iraq is a buffer between Saudi Arabia and Iran, two nations, while both Islamic, one is Shia, one is Sunni, so there's a natural friction there, and Iraq can serve as a buffer there. Iraq is also the gateway between the East and the West, and it's an absolute critical component for China's Silk Road initiative. So for all of these reasons, Iraq, as I've said, per square mile could be the richest country in the world, and that country needs its own currency. And that country has passed a 3-year budget that can't function without their own currency. It is true that Iraq now has the largest reserve currency that they've ever had. I guess it's close to 125 billion USD. But that isn't even close to what they would need to run their country for 3 years and fund the international contracts for the building of roads, their water system, their electric grid, and all of that. So the passage of this budget necessarily means that Iraq must have its own currency, and they're moving quickly toward that. Now, this is all very good news for those of us that have currencies. Over the last few months, I've talked about the need for establishing this trust product of ours, not just because you happen to be a denarian or someone that has pre-valued currencies, but for any American based on the high surveillance, high tax state that they are attempting to establish in this country. But because of where we find ourselves today, I want to reserve the balance of what I'm going to talk about for those of us that have currencies and are anxiously awaiting the reinstitution of the dinar. Now, Trusts Unlimited, it's close to 15 years now, made a decision way back when to work with denarians, being denarians ourselves, knowing what was involved in all of this work. We knew that the average American who purchases currencies is basically, for the first time in their life, going to be handling a substantial amount of wealth. And in addition to the investment rigors of investing, there are other issues of privacy, asset protection, asset and wealth management, all of the things of that nature. So we put a turnkey program in place to assist denarians. Phase 1 is pre-RV, Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts. Post-RV involves all the product, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to our clients after the revaluation. But let's talk a little bit about why we made the decision to establish a package of self-settled asset protection trusts. Well, first, there are a number of entities individuals can establish to provide some level of asset protection: LLCs, sub-S corporations, limited family partnerships, and the like. However, while these entities do provide some level of asset protection, number one, they're regulated statutorily, meaning state by state. So the state's going to be well aware of what's in the business, how the business operates. In addition, courts have ruled that these entities, if they're owned in the majority by one person or a closely held group like a family, they can be pierced for civil litigation. That, however, is not the case with our trust package. You are impervious to civil litigation. This package is structured properly. In addition, this package is registered with no state, no county, no municipality, no federal government. So it's completely and totally private. And that's why we decided to establish it. Now, what are the specific benefits that a trust package like this would provide? First, it provides privacy and anonymity. That's because the assets within this trust package are sealed. The general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. In addition, this trust operates under an EIN number, not your Social Security number, so it's a separate entity entirely. Second, this trust will allow you to circumvent IRS scrutiny. If your currencies are owned by this trust rather than you directly, the profit from the exchange will occur within the trust, not you personally. Why is that important? Because there's less than a 15% chance of an audit if this revaluation were to occur within our trust. But even if the IRS determines they want to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. Third, one of the trusts within this package is our pre-RV gifting subtrust. So individuals that have currencies and want to gift currencies to family and friends can do so through the trust. Now, if you're gifting to family and friends and individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the post-RV lump sum after you've negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you're in a situation where you have individuals who cannot or you do not think can handle the post-RV proceeds. Minor children, individuals with disabilities, other issues, you can gift to them through this subtrust. By gifting through this gifting subtrust, not only will you avoid the federal gift tax, but you will have complete control of the post-RV proceeds through this gift subtrust, meaning you will be able to manage, invest, and distribute this money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. Fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost of probate, which would, of course, publicize the estate, and the federal estate tax. The federal estate tax can be as high as 65% of your estate above approximately $10 million. But with this trust, there is no probate, meaning the general public will not be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much each stands to inherit. And most importantly, they will not be subject to the federal estate tax, meaning they will inherit 100 cents on the dollar immediately. And the fifth and last reason you'd want to establish this trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits, one pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Very simply, it means this. You can only be sued for what you actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to our trust package. So let's say, for example, you have 10 million dinar that you purchased for $10,000. You transfer those currencies on paper to our trust package. They subsequently revalue, and let's just say for $1, for $10 million. Because you transferred the currencies pre-RV, you can't be sued for their post-RV value of $10 million. The most you can be sued for is the value at the time of the transfer, $10,000. Well, no one's going to sue you for $10,000, most likely. And even if they do, once again, they get $10,000, assuming you lose. The rest of the $10 million is free and clear. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability. Stop loss. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets. This is why we've set up a package of trust. Basically, after the revaluation, you have your money in trust. You decide to make some purchases, and as you purchase homes, cars, boats, etc., you place each of those items in their own separate subtrust. Why would you do this? Well, again, this is segregation of assets. So if, for example, you're in a car accident or someone slips and falls in one of your rental properties, the only thing they could theoretically go after is whatever's in that subtrust, that car or that home, because all of the other assets are in separate subtrusts, which under the law or separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the litigation involved. Therefore, the plaintiff would have no standing to pursue those separate legal entities. The example I use is a commercial barge where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your trust package prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. But if you think about it, all of the benefits that we discussed here would be invaluable to American citizens who, frankly, have had it with this government and what they're attempting to do with the digital central bank digital currency, with all of the invasive things that they're trying to do, with the potential tax increases that they're proposing, all of this stuff. We can avoid all of that as an American citizen, with or without currencies, by establishing this trust package. Now, this package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV and financial assets like banking and checking accounts post-RV. This master trust will also have the ability to manage the other subtrusts. Then there is the gift subtrust. That's an optional subtrust, again, only if you wish to gift currencies to family and friends and manage the post-RV proceeds. But that subtrust is available as a standard subtrust if you do not wish to utilize it as a gift subtrust, and then 8 additional standard subtrusts to hold financial or physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with Dinarians, we knew that that price tag was going to be unaffordable for many. So by deferring all funding of that trust and simplifying the package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500. That's not possible. We even have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket cost just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the dinar globally occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. Now, with this approach, anyone that understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust enforced pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card, and not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would actually be less than $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust enforced for all of the reasons that we've discussed here. So in closing, and I am going to have to run again because, as a matter of fact, I've gotten 3 or 4 phone calls since we started this call. But in closing, just let me say that under our system of civil procedure, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them or lose them outright. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family those situations when you can lose control of those assets. Things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. The establishment of this trust literally removes all of the obstacles and problems that you could potentially face with an overnight acquisition of wealth of this nature. So I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I'm sorry I'm moving through this quickly. I think I am going to go ahead and see if we can do a little Q&A. So let me go ahead and open the Q&A now. Before I take any potential questions, I do want to give callers our contact information. I strongly suggest if the things we're discussing here are of interest, you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. It does contain everything you need if you wish to establish your family asset protection trust package, but you're under no obligation to do so. The package has a lot of information about us, about trusts, about the currencies, about our services pre- and post-RV. You can review the package, contact us by phone or email. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to assist you. There will be no consultation fee. And again, everything you need is included in the package if you wish to proceed. So let's go ahead. We have some Q&A here. Our first caller is Our first call is area code 347. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Praveen from New York. Okay, did the Iraqi budget pass?
Yes, the Iraqi budget passed Sunday the 11th, and the budget's been sent to Soudani and Rashid for approval.
Okay, so after that's approved, then what? Do you think that is the rate in the budget, or that's not in the budget?
Well, what's supposed to happen is the budget then goes into the Gazette, theoretically for 30 days. I don't think that the 30-day curing process in the Gazette is going to be a factor at all. I think they're going to proceed with whatever they want to do. A change in the exchange rate is one of the mechanisms within the budget, and as I said earlier in the call, it's conceivable that we'll wake up one day and that the dinar will be at 325 or something of that nature. But what I think they're going to do is, I think over the next few weeks, worst case scenario, a couple of months, they're going to incrementally probably drop it to 1,200, 1,100, 1,000, and then one day it'll be 1-to-1. Once it's 1-to-1, it'll go into 4X, and we're off to the races.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Our next caller is area code 443. That's 443. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. It's Gina from Maryland. How you doing?
How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. Hey, so last week there was quite a bit of discussion about, when this happens, and the time frame for taking action for tax purposes, and everything will be done, like the tax paying, it's all done through the trust. Is that correct? Like your trust has an EIN number, so when we make a estimated tax payment, I guess, for this, we're making it out of an account that has been established for the trust.
Right. You'll establish an account.
Okay.
Whether you have a trust or not, if the revaluation occurs in a given quarter, taxes on the profit from the exchange would be due on the 15th day of the first month of the next quarter, which is why last week I said I don't really want to see the global revaluation in June, once we get to June 15th, because taxes would be due in 30 days. We may want to hold the currency if it's at a lower float than what we think it's going to be worth. We're not entirely sure what the tax is. It's, in my opinion, based on our reading of the code, it should be cap gains outside of the trust, tax deferred within the trust, but without confirmation from the Treasury with such a large, transaction, we'd have no choice. I'll just tell you what I'm going to do. If the revaluation happens on the last day of June, on July 15th, I'm going to pay the ordinary income tax and file for a refund citing 98082 and Section 643A and B of the code. We'll make that available on our website. But ideally, what I'd like to see is a reval any day in July, even up to in early August, because that gives us time once again to allow the currency to float to potentially higher rate, and it allows us to get the IRS to confirm the tax status.
Okay, but what if you do not take action to exchange?
Ordinarily, with a capital asset, there's no taxable event until you've actually negotiated the exchange. However, if you read the last sentence in Section 988E2 of the Internal Revenue Code, it specifically says, if the profit that would be realized from the exchange exceeds $200, you must pay the tax.
Well, it's going, right? We're all going to be in that situation. So
we may already be there.
Right. Well, right. So essentially you have no choice but to take action to exchange, because if you don't, you're at risk of being fined unless you never plan to take action, because they won't know anything unless you actually do the exchange. The IRS is never going to know, right?
The Treasury Department knows. when you purchase, the Treasury Department's going to know. They're going to get that information. If they know how much currency. I'm just going to make a number. Let's say there's 1 billion dinar in circulation in the United States that was purchased by American citizens, and let's say after the revaluation, 900 million did their exchange. That means there's 100 million out there that didn't do the exchange. Well, what do you think they want 87,000 IRS agents for?
Mm-hmm.
All they have to do is put a question on your tax return as a person. Do you still possess any dinar that have not, or currencies that have not been exchanged? If you lie, then you've just committed tax fraud. The currencies are gone and you go to jail. So, we're not going to get around it. You got to pay the taxes. And that's why I always say when we get to the end of a quarter, especially if we've had currencies for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, for goodness sakes, wait a couple weeks. Wait
right.
for July. At this point, July, the first month, even the first 6 weeks, but the first month of a quarter is golden because that gives us plenty of time, again, to allow the currency to float, to appreciate further, plenty of time to determine exactly what the tax is, and just pay the tax.
Well, and I don't have an expectation that this is. I think it's going to be complicated. Like I think when you go to whatever financial institution is recommended, I don't see it being a quick exercise to get through this. I can see, and so how people like me, right? I'm an average person. If that exchange doesn't get done, I'm not positioned to pay any taxes on that.
That's exactly right. You could get into a cash flow crunch. That's another reason why we don't want to see it late in a quarter. You can't get into the bank in enough time to do the exchange, or you don't know any better, and the bank puts a 10-day hold on your money. You say, hey, look, it's July 15th. It's July 10th. Taxes are due on the 15th. You put a 10 or 20-day hold on my money. I can't pay the tax. What's going on? So we just don't, and a lot of people that have dinar don't have any clue how to work with all of this, which is, once again, once we get into the end of a quarter, it's just not worth it. And frankly, I wouldn't put it past this bunch in Washington to try to pull the trigger at the last second on the theory that, okay, these people aren't going to pay the taxes, now we get all of it.
Mm.
You're looking at 39.4%, 5% millionaire surtax puts it at, 39.6%, 5% millionaire surtax puts you at 44.6, 100% penalty on that puts you at 90%. They wipe you out and they sleep like a baby.
Right. Well, so okay, so it's the trust in my case, because mine are assigned to the trust. If you choose to keep some separate and you just exchange that separately with the bank, which who even knows if they're going to, how that they would even do it.
Well, the other thing that could happen is the bank could just say, well, we're holding 40% of the money for taxes, that could happen. So we'll see. My only point is this. We have problems if it's late in the quarter, and if it's early in the quarter, we're in good shape. We have plenty of time to manage all of this. The IRS can't jerk us around, the Treasury can't jerk us around, the bank can't jerk us around. We have plenty of time. And that also gives people like us a chance to get together with our clients, say, okay, look, this is the information we've now gleaned. This is the way it's going to work. But if we're caught in a pinch at the end of a quarter, I'm not telling people. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay the ordinary income tax and file for a refund, citing the sections of the code. That may work. It may not. But one thing I do know, I won't be subject to any penalty and interest.
And if this, so when our discussions will be about taking those actions. When it revalues, all discussions going forward are going to be about guiding us on how.
When it reinstitutes in country, that's when we stop marketing the Family Asset Protection Trust and deal with these issues. Now, it could reinstitute in country and reval, say 30 days later. That would give us more than enough time. Or what I think is going to happen, I think it's going to reinstitute in country and in a very short time end up on the Forex, because they're salivating to get that thing in their basket. The same with Buna, all of them. They're the Arab Monetary Fund. They all want to get the dinar in their basket. So we're not going to have a whole lot of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm not, I'm learning this as I go, right, from you, and I dig in. I've looked at that tax code, I've read it, but I have somebody who files my taxes. So when the time comes, right, I'm going to have to, she and I are going to sit down and I'm going to say, look, here's the tax code, and we're going to talk about this, because she doesn't even know this trust exists, because she hasn't had to do anything for us with it.
The other issue
she doesn't
is
even. Mm-hmm.
The other issue, we don't know how the Treasury Department's going to interpret this transaction. I mean, you could make the argument, well, I'm in physical possession of the currency. That's not the same thing as a currency option. It should be cap gain. But I just have a feeling, even if it's reversed, they're going to call it ordinary income. But if they call it ordinary income and we don't pay the ordinary income tax, then we're fighting for our money. I'd rather overpay the tax and get a refund than underpay the tax and kiss it goodbye.
Well, and I mean, this probably leaves a bad taste in your mouth, but maybe overpay the tax and maybe you don't get it back, but at least you don't suffer all the consequences of what they could do.
Well, when I say overpay, that means I gave them $1 and it turns out I only owed them 50 cents. Then they got to give me my 50 cents back. Remember, it's not just you or me against them. It's 10 million dinarians who, despite whatever the tax code is, we still got a lot of money. We have good legal representation, and they're not going to get away with it.
Okay.
The only way they hurt us is if we get trumped by the code or the timing. That's why I said we want to see it in the beginning of a quarter, but if it happens very late in the quarter, we got to pay the ordinary income tax, file for a refund. That's the only way to protect us from their nonsense.
Well, I know what I'm praying for. It's July, not this month. I've waited this long. What does it matter?
Well, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you so much for what you do for us. Much appreciated. Take care.
Thanks. Okay, Regina. Bye-bye. Okay, our next call is area code 210. That's 210. Go ahead.
Jim, it's Ted. Just a couple of questions. What do you think the chances are of the government getting the digital currency in effect?
I think they're running into trouble because they can't do it without vote from the Congress. I don't think they're going to get cooperation from the House. And as a matter of fact, I can't remember which Republican did it, but I think someone just introduced a bill in the House basically to stop the central bank digital currency on the grounds that it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment right to privacy. And so that gums it up. As far as, I don't want to ever see the central bank digital currency, but hopefully, let's assume the worst case scenario that eventually goes through. What we need is enough time to go to the bank, do our exchange, and get our money out of the bank before they try to put the clamps on it. So I think we may have dodged a bullet on that one.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. But even if they did get it through and we did have all of our money in our trust, it would have the same effect on our trust money that it would on anything else in the bank unless we get it out of the bank totally.
It would have the same effect on your money in or out of a trust to the extent that it's in the bank, which is why I was talking about utilizing tangible assets that pay a dividend. I talked about real estate investment trust, real estate. I myself plan on investing in residential real estate. Like create a portfolio. I'm creating a portfolio of little rental properties. I'll hire a manager to handle all that so I can do my thing, and I'll pay them well so that I don't, because my precious commodity, once I have this money, my precious commodity is time, not money. So I'll spend dollars to have quality people manage the properties that I purchase. Now, the rent and all of that goes into the bank, but the underlying asset is a physical asset. It's not in the bank. So it minimizes their control of me because I've minimized the amount of money that's in the bank.
Okay, I understand. I appreciate it very much. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Certainly. Yes, sir. Take care. Bye-bye. Our next caller is area code 415. That's 415. Go ahead.
Well, hello, Jim. How are you? This is Al from
Al,
San
how you doing, my friend?
Awesome like a possum and almost can't stand it. But, yeah, I was listening to a lot of stuff. But one thing that you normally say I didn't hear is also Texas and a few other states are trying to make their own currency. If that's the case, that might be an advantage for us to have accounts in those states or in those states.
Well, yes, you're right. Yes, I did discuss that. Actually, I was remiss on not mentioning it to the previous caller, but let me go ahead and say it again. States like Texas, Arizona, and I believe Montana are already in the position of establishing their own gold-backed state currency, which, of course, the Constitution provides for. So what that means is another mechanism or another strategy to avoid the central bank digital currency would be to establish bank accounts in those states, and then you would operate using your ATM card or your credit card from that bank, and you would be operating outside the central bank digital currency. So that's another potential option as well, and we need to exercise all and every options, in my opinion, to decentralize. The federal government is run by a bunch of folks now that want to centralize everything. They want a top-down government. We want a bottoms-up federalized system of government, and so we can utilize these techniques to at least minimize, if not totally exempt ourselves from their absurd little control mechanisms.
Well, along with the gold backed, are we looking at them making gold coins or gold notes, or do you have any idea? Yeah.
My understanding is it's going to be a digital gold-backed currency. So it is digital, but it's not a federal central bank digital currency. The credit score system that they have in mind putting in place federally will not be a factor in the state system. But again, let's assume, just for the sake of argument, that even the state digital systems are a little bit too much control-oriented. Like I said, well, we'll just invest in tangible assets that pay a dividend and put even less money in the banks. I mean, if we want to get really exotic, we can even move out of the SWIFT system altogether. I'm not saying we should do that. I'm just saying once you have acquired this wealth, your job is then to manage that wealth. And if that requires taking offshore or other extraordinary measures to ensure that as close to 100 cents on a dollar remains in your control, then those are the things that you'll be spending your time doing.
Well, yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I was just kind of bouncing a few things and, like you said, trying to look in between the lines of what they're doing. Thank you for all your help. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for reaching out to this community. You are awesome like a possum, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Al. Appreciate it, my friend. Bye-bye. Okay, our next caller is area code 810. That's 810. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. This is Diane. How are you?
How are you, Diane?
I'm doing good. Have a question, a couple of questions. One of them you kind of pretty much answered in regards to the tax thing there, but you were saying something about filing, just filing for the taxes, but you said the code was 9882?
988E2.
E2.
E, yeah, Edward 2. And
okay.
Section 643A and B of the Internal Revenue Code. Now, those are a little bit more nuanced, but I have talked to some experts that, in their view, feel that could provide tax deferral on the exchange within the trust. But whether that's the case or not, it's all moot if, again, the revaluation happens at the very end of a quarter, because we can rely on our own interpretation of the code, but if the IRS or the Treasury say we're wrong and we lose, then we got to pay 100% penalty plus interest. So even though we don't like it, we'd be better off paying the ordinary income tax and filing for a refund, citing those sections. I hate to be redundant, but this is one area where we want to be very careful. We do not want to ever be accused of telling someone not to pay a tax or to underpay the tax. If we don't know the specifics, you got to pay the ordinary income. There are competitors of ours out there that are telling people that because it's a currency exchange, there is no tax. And we're shocked that supposed professionals would say such a thing, because not only are they jeopardizing their clients with bad information, they're probably going to get tagged with tax fraud, and they're going to spend some time in a federal prison. So we want to make it very clear. We want everyone to pay their taxes. We do believe that there are potential savings with regard to the cap gain tax and the deferral within a trust, but that's merely our reading of it. Absent confirmation from the Treasury, pay the ordinary income tax and file for a refund.
Okay, so it was something else you said too. I just want to get clarification. You said that the banks might, or could you ask them if they could set aside so much, maybe, half for taxes?
Do yourself a favor. Never ask the bank to hold your money. Don't do that. Well, all I'm saying is when you go in to do the exchange, we may not have a choice. They may have already established that a certain amount is being held. Now, if we're going in and we have a trust and it turns out that the exchange done within the trust is tax deferred, then they really did us a disservice, but there's nothing we can do about it other than, say, hey, I went to XYZ Bank. They held 30% of my money. Pursuant to this section of the code, it was tax deferred. I want my money back.
Okay.
But, once again, if, we're somewhat on the fly with that. The banks are going to try to put a 10 or 21 day hold on our money. They're not going to want the money to be liquid. They're scared to death you're going to move it to another bank or a brokerage firm or something like that. So they're going to have all kinds of lights and whistles and bells and shiny objects for us. But you got to go in there with the mission. You want to negotiate the exchange. You want the money in your trust bank account, and you want it available as soon as possible. And if you want to work with them any further, that'll be your decision, not theirs.
Okay. Last question. The Zim. What do you think about that? Is it going to be going, or?
Well, as a Zim holder myself, I still feel that if the Zim does go, it will be the last one to go. It does have the most leverage of the other ones. There are actually some good things going on in Zimbabwe. As a matter of fact, my son-in-law is from Zimbabwe. He lives in this country now, and he just recently became an American citizen, but he's from Zimbabwe. And I talked to him about it, and he said, you know what? We're all confused. We don't know we can't even explain. Is our currency, is it a bond? Is it current? What is it? So the Zim is a little confusing, but it was so inexpensive to purchase. Why not take a chance?
Okay.
And if, even at a penny, we're going to make a heck of a lot of money on the Zim. So I mean, for me, if you don't have dinar, you're not in the game. And I have had clients call to say, I got a ton of Zim. What else do you have? Nothing else. Well, guess what? Go get some dinar. If you can't afford it, sell some of the Zim. You got to have some dinar, because what's going to really upset you is when you see people filing in and out of the bank to exchange their dinar, and you're sitting there with enough Zim to wallpaper your bedroom. That's not going to help you. So have some dinar.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jim.
Certainly.
And that was good information. Okay, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, Diane was our last call for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. If the things we've discussed here today are of interest to you, I strongly suggest that you, at the very least, subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Share it with your friends and family that are like-minded. I would also strongly suggest that if you are a holder of dinar and these other currencies, you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed, but you're under no obligation to do so. You can contact us by email or phone. Of course, our website is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. Contact us to get our initial package or questions. We'll be happy to assist you. Usually I try to get back to people within 24 hours, but the last few weeks it's been absolutely impossible. We're getting 30 to 50 contacts a day, and if you talk to someone for just 10 or 15 minutes, you can do the math on that. So we'll do our best to get the information to you. Now, our next call, of course, is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye.